Good afternoon and welcome to More Tea Minister. My name is Ian. You're watching the first video in a double bill for today. In fact, I suppose you could call it a triple bill because in this first video we're going to be looking at two teas, and then in our next video we're going to be looking at another tea. In each case we are looking at white teas from Nepal. They come from different farms or different collectives, but they were all sold under the label of Discover Nepal Tea. It's a kind of collective, if you will, based in Australia. So the reason why the videos are being grouped as they are is that, first of all, I have quite a few of these white teas to go through, and I don't want to do them all in a rush or try to do them all in one video, because in both instances that would be rather cumbersome. However, I've tried to arrange them in what at least makes sense to me. So first of all, we have these two teas, one from spring 2024, the other from autumn 2024. More details in the next part of our video. They both come from different collectives or farms within Nepal. However, what they have in common, apart from the year of harvesting, is that they are from the same plucking standard, which is why in both cases these are white peony teas. One is a spring white peony, the other is an autumn white peony. And in our next video, we'll be looking at the third tea, but the second autumn harvest, again from 2024, but that's a different plucking standard again. So that's all I'm going to say at the minute, because we're now going to move on to look at these two tea caddies and the contents in greater detail. See you in a moment. Welcome back to part 2 of our video. I've initially put our two tea caddies side by side so that you get a sense of this minimalist but very effective design. There is a black metal tin in both cases with a black sticker. The sticker runs from about 90% of the way of the tin up to the lid. Here it's perforated in both cases, and then the label runs over the top and then down the other side. That allows the back part of the label at this point in both cases to act effectively as a hinge. I'm sorry it's slightly out of focus. What I want to stress as we look at this packaging is that there is some incorrect information. I don't want to dwell on this because I'm not intending to criticize, because Discover Nepal Tea got back to me to answer my queries in an exemplary fashion, but I do want to point it out just as we go along to avoid any confusion. So let's move these tins to the back part here, and you can see hopefully first of all the sticker is continuing. I'm sorry if this isn't brilliantly focused. I'm just trying to avoid messing with it. In both cases, we've got some similar information. It's white peony. We've got harvest information. Now, this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because the information over here is, in some respects, a replica of this side. In other words, we've got some spring information on this side and this side, whereas this is the spring harvest and this is the autumn harvest. So, for example, when we come to our best before, this says May 2026 because of an April 2024 harvest. This should say, I believe, October or November 2026 because of a 2 years and a month later best before date. This is from an autumn harvest period of time. However, aside from that, a lot of the information is still correct. In this instance, the origin or producer of the tea is Farmers Tea Industry based in Malate, Ilam, Nepal. And in this case, this is the KANCHANJUNGA Organic Orthodox CHIYA, Sakhejung Ilam municipality in Ilam, Nepal. So, the information itself has been admirably corrected by Discover Nepal Tea. This is corrected for an autumn harvest, and this remains accurate as a spring harvest. I'm just going to pause this video now and arrange it so you can have a look at the contents. Hello again. That's the camera slightly rearranged so we can see the contents of our video, the contents of the tin. This is the spring harvest. As you can see, there is a lovely vibrant green pretty much throughout the sample. There are some paler elements such as some almost white strands here. There's some slight oxidation on some of the leaves, but in general, they're looking a lovely vibrant green. Some of the pieces are quite large. There is a leaf just down here. Hopefully you can see that. That's quite large. And that's natural because this is white peony. This isn't pure bud material. So it's perfectly natural to expect some much more unfurled leaf. Also, this isn't rolled tea in the sense of a Taiwanese oolong. This is simply withered and left as is. So, a fairly uniform green colour, some slightly more oxidized pieces, some slightly more chunky pieces, but a lovely uniform colour. In the case of the Autumnal Harvest tea, I would say that the colour variation is a little broader insofar as there are definitely some darker pieces like here and here. And there's a tendency, I think, for the colour to be slightly more bleached out. There is more material like here and here and here and here, which is almost white. I would say the material is also slightly less unfurled. There's some slightly more unfurled material here, but generally speaking, I would say this is more compact, and colour-wise, it's a lot more bleached out. Other than that, it looks very inviting, as does the other tea material, and I'm looking forward to brewing it up. Hello again, and welcome back to part 3 of our video. I'm not sure how much of what we have in front of you can see clearly, but we're going to try and brew 2 teas, the spring and the autumn white peony, side by side, and I'm going to try and get all the parameters as equal as possible. So to that end, we've got the 2 tins here, so I can remember how to pronounce the names of the producers properly. I've got 2 cups here. These aren't for drinking out of. Today we're going full china for the drinking. These are to hold our strainers. You'll note that in our 2 transparent jugs, we've actually got a metal strainer in each. We're going for Western style, and I want to keep it as simple as possible and in such a way that I can make sure that I don't steep one more than the other. The brewing parameters for both teas are identical according to the producers and the vendors. So here we have the spring, here we have the autumn, and it is remarkable how there is a difference in the appearance, which we've already discussed. I'm going to have a smell. There was something minty and herbal about the spring, and the autumnal one, it's much more rounded, almost fruity, in fact. So I'm looking forward to that distinction. The brewing parameters are 80 to 85 degrees for the water. We're going for 80. And that seems not hot enough. In fact, do you know what? We're going to live dangerously. We're going to go to 85. Let's push that to get as much flavour as we can. And the brewing parameters are also for 2 minutes, so that is what we are going to do. I've got a timer set here. The reason for the strainers is that we don't need to mess around with our wastewater bowl or anything like that. I'll give this one the 2-minute countdown, and I'll start this one 10 seconds later. And hopefully by that point we can move across. In terms of the brewing parameters, the difference is that in both cases the instructions say 1 teaspoon per cup. We're going to try and standardize that. In both bowls we have 3 grams of tea, and we're going to go for an equal amount of water in both jugs, something close to 300 mils. I thought bringing out the weighing scales would make it even more complicated. So that's enough talking. Let's get on with things. First of all, let's get the spring harvest white peony, that is, in our bowl, 3 grams, and the autumn in this, not a bowl, a jug, and the autumn in this one. And let's move those out of the way. I've got my timer set here. So let's get some water into this one. I reckon that is going to be about 300. And let's give this a 10 seconds, and then we will replicate here. Maybe just a touch more to get them even. As I say, we're going to try and be fair to the pair of them. That's not bad at all. That's not bad at all for doing it by eye. So let's have a see what we're getting from the brewing tea. It's not finished by any means yet. There's almost something minty, but almost something menthol, something slightly clearing, that kind of scent you would associate with menthol, but not the full minty aspect to it. And on this side, it's fruit. This is very ripe fruit, mixed in with quite a bit of sweetness to it. This side, let's try now. Again, it's very herbal, it's very minty. There's a hint of sweetness coming through now. Now it's brewed for a bit longer, but it's still much more herby, minty, vegetal. And this is much more sort of candied fruit. That's really it. It's a ripe fruit, but imagine one that's been candied into the bargain. Right, we've got 20 seconds to go on these. I'm going to resist the temptation to put that other piece of tea in the pot there. So this is the first of 2 videos for today, which leaves me with at least 2 more Nepalese white teas. The reason why I'm trying to bring them all out at once is because I have a lot of tea still to review. So, excuse that terrible noise. I promise I will turn that off. And that's the 10 minutes for 2 minutes for this side. An extra 10 seconds is what I meant to say. So, spring in this hand, autumn in this hand. I don't think they look radically different. The colour scheme is pretty much the same for you as it is for me. That is still more focusing on herbs and vegetables and something slightly sharp like mint. And this is fruit. This is like a very sweet white tea. So let's try the spring one to start with. I feel rather grown up bringing out the best china for this. I hope my wife doesn't watch this video, because we don't usually we only usually use the china for very special occasions, not for husband to do one of his tea reviews. Right. Let us see what a white peony spring harvest tea from Nepal is like. It's a long taste, it's still on my palate. There's a hint of fruit on the taste that isn't on the smell, but it's still focusing more, I would say, on herbs, on vegetal flavour. It doesn't taste cooked or anything like that, but I think that's really quite nice, and I'm glad I did 85 degrees. That's really refreshing. It's light, but it's flavoursome, and it's still on the palate. So let's go to our autumn harvest. This is, as I say, much more like a traditional white tea from, let's say, China. It's got loads of ripe fruit. The taste, yeah, there's loads of fruit there. Again, like the spring one, it's not in your face, but it's also not weak or insipid. It's supple and it's subtle and it's perfectly balanced. Let me try that again. I just had a thought. I'll come back to that in a minute. It reminds me, the autumn harvest reminds me very much of the milk white dumplings that we looked at. There's some sort of underlying flavor that reminds me of that cream and vanilla combination from the broom tea and the milk white. But it's not that strong and it's not that obvious, but there's a lovely richness to it. Now I've tried that. There's a hint of it in the spring as well. That's interesting. The spring is much more, it's captured the freshness and the herbal quality, the vegetable quality of a white tea. And the autumn one is much more what over here I would associate with autumn, the ripe fruits and all of that concentrated flavor. So you are getting a very distinct flavor profile, to match the fact that they don't look the same either. We are now at 10 minutes, and that's far too long for the third part of this video. So let's sum up. The taste of them is very different, but absolutely fantastic. In this instance, for spring, you've got something herbal and something minty and something vegetal with some sweetness. On this side, it's ripe fruits and a little bit thicker, a little bit stronger in the flavor, but they're both lovely and well balanced. How easy are they to get hold of? Well, this was sent from Australia with no difficulties. Nepalese tea, it may surprise some viewers to know, is readily available from different vendors. And so in that respect, I think we'll give that a pass, even though Nepalese white tea might not be quite so easy to get hold of. And for brewing, nothing could be simpler. I have gone for 1 gram of tea per 100 mils of water at 85 degrees for 2 minutes. The brewing parameter seems spot on. So all that remains for me to say, so that means it's 3 points for both teas, full marks, a hearty recommendation for both. And all that remains for me to do is to say happy steeping and God bless.